Hi everyone, welcome to my advanced vlog, everything about balls. In this episode I'm gonna talk about the Canon R6 again. I've used this camera for a couple of weeks now and I found some advantages but also some small disadvantages, but I think I know the reason why. So welcome to this episode. So in this episode I'm going to talk about the Canon R6 again. I've used this camera for a couple of weeks already. I took some pictures during a futsal game, also during a volleyball game. And most of the pictures I took with this lens. It's my trusty old Canon 70-200 2.8 LIS USM lens. Still the first version of this lens. I think I have it for about 15 years now, and as you can see, still in perfect condition. You can't find a dent on it, not even a mark or something like that, so it's absolutely perfect. A lens that I also used a couple of times is this one. It's the Canon 100mm 2.8 LIS USM lens. Normally it's for macro shots, but you can also use it as a tele lens as well, of course. And then also for some portrait shots I use this lens. And it's the Canon 50mm USM lens. It's a 1.4 aperture, and for taking portraits this is absolutely perfect. Also this Thursday I'm gonna have to take some pictures from a basketball game. No, not a basketball game, a basketball team here in Belgium. It's called Kangaroos Mechelen. I have to take individual pictures of the players, of the female and the male players, and then this lens is absolutely perfect. Now talk about the Canon R6 itself, because that's also really important. First of all, autofocus. I think this camera is amazing. Sometimes I use the eye detection, but sometimes I also can't use it because there are a lot of people in the frame, and then it goes hunting for other people's eyes, and that's also not what it's supposed to do. So that's sometimes why I also use zone, and then it works absolutely perfect. So even with this adapter on my R6, the autofocus is still as fast as it should be. Image quality, yeah, no question about it. It's absolutely amazing. I have used my 7D Mark II for a lot of years now, and when I see this full frame sensor, it also has the same amount of megapixels. It's just amazing. The noise level, even at ISO 12800, is still perfectly usable. Then also something I have to talk about, and that's the frames per second. And unfortunately, I can only use the 12 frames per second with this lens only for the moment. It's only with this 100mm 2.8 macro lens. This lens, which is also a normal Canon lens, unfortunately I can only take about 5 or 6 frames per second. And I also put this on a YouTube channel of someone that I also know, and I put the question up there, and I said, is this because of the adapter that I use, or is it because of the camera? And the guy said to me, no, it's because of the adapter that you are using. I also use still very old lenses myself with the Canon adapter, and I don't have any problems with it. So that's why I also maybe have to wait for the Canon adapter as well, but for the moment it's still waiting, still in back order. And maybe within a month or two, hopefully I will receive it. I don't know, but I'm checking frequently on every website and I still haven't found it as available yet. So I think maybe within a couple of months, hopefully. But for the moment, I can still work with the Comlight adapter that I have on my camera for the moment. But unfortunately, I have to take pictures in electronic shutter instead of manual shutter. With this lens, I can do it with mechanical shutter as well, because then I reach the 12 frames per second, but all the rest of my lenses is only about 6 frames per second, so that's definitely not enough. I also have the same problem with not reaching the desired frames per second with these lenses. First of all, the Canon EF 50mm f1.4 USM. Luckily, I only use this for portraits. Then we have the Canon EF 85 f1.8 USM, I don't use this lens too often, fortunately. But also the same problem with the lens that I'm currently using for recording this video, the Canon EF 20mm f2.8 USM. And last but not least, also the Sigma 120-300mm f2.8 DG OS HSM Sport. With all these lenses, I can only reach about 6 frames per second, which is not enough for sports photography. So during the volleyball game that was about a couple of days ago, I used the electronic shutter for the first time. Also during an amateur volleyball game as well on Sunday, I also used the electronic shutter. The big advantage is you can reach 20 frames per second, so that is fantastic. Unfortunately, you also have to delete a lot of pictures because you take about 20 or 25 pictures in just one shot, and then you have to delete maybe most of them. Some pictures you can still use, of course, because that's what it's supposed to do, but most of the pictures are just before framing and after framing, so that's the problem sometimes. And also what I want to mention is I don't see the rolling shutter effect too much, so that's also a big advantage. And that is because I don't do horizontal panning, and that's when the rolling shutter problem starts. So if you only go vertical and also with small amounts, I don't think you will notice the electronic shutter as well. So that's also one of the big advantages of when you take pictures of volleyball games. Of course, when you have to move from one side to the net to the other side of the net, then it's best not to take pictures while you're panning, because otherwise you get the rolling shutter. And sometimes I also notice it on my pictures, but I didn't post them on Facebook or on Flickr, of course, because it's just crap if you see the rolling shutter effect. But if you are standing still and just take pictures and you know what's coming, then you don't have any problems with the electronic shutter. So for the moment, I'm using this kind of solution because I still have to wait for the Canon adapter itself. But for the moment, I think the Canon R6, when I see the difference between my 7D and the R6, I stay with the R6 all day. Yeah, absolutely. The 7D, I don't say it's crap for the money. It's still a very perfect camera. It's about 1,400 euro, I think it was. So it's still a perfect camera. You can take 10 frames per second. But unfortunately, with the crop sensor, you start to introduce a lot of noise, even at low ISO levels. So, and that's also why I decided to buy the Canon R6, because it's a full frame camera and also the same amount of megapixel. So I hope I have solved a lot of problems for you guys if you want to decide to buy this Canon R6. So for me, the big advantages are autofocus, image quality, also the noise level is absolutely perfect. But unfortunately, because of the adapter that I'm using, the big disadvantage is the frames per second in mechanical shutters. So if you have the opportunity to use electronic shutter, I would suggest to use it, but only when you pan vertically and not so much. If you start to pan horizontally, then you're in a lot of trouble. So don't do that. If you can use mechanical shutter and you don't have to use the 12 frames per second, yeah, just go to 6 or 5 frames per second, and then it also should not be a problem if you take pictures with the mechanical shutter. So I also included a couple of pictures after this video, then you can see if you see a rolling shutter effect or not. I hope not, but you will see it as well. So, thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. Also hit the bell icon if you want to receive notifications. If you have questions, just put them down below in the comments and I will respond as fast as possible. See you next time. Bye.